play. Meanwhile, last night, that hearing between Oregon State, Washington State, and the rest of the Pac-12 that's leaving, there's a lot of different reporters. Nicole Auerbach, this is hers. The judge rules in favor of Oregon State, Washington State. Preliminary injunction has been granted, and now they are the only two voting members of the Pac-12 board. The other 10 schools must still be treated in a fair and open manner and cannot be harmed. One of the quotes from the judge, this is not a shutout. Nobody's going to take advantage of somebody else. Of course, the 10, they were disappointed. I'm sure it now goes to an appeal, but at least for now, and John Wilner will join us. Here's the statement from the 10 who are leaving, are immediately seeking review of the Washington Supreme Court, requesting to put on hold implementation of this decision, on and on and on. And eventually, in the best interest for our student athletes, athletic departments, universities, as far as leaving. And so there we are. The hearing didn't take long. And last night they came down with a decision. John Wilner will join us here in about 15 minutes on that decision.
I think the key thing would be that they have to treat the other 10 members in fairness, which means that they can't just go, who's getting all the money? How about Oregon State and Washington State? Washington State, you're good with that? Okay, so are we. All right, next thing. Who gets all of this? We do. Who
has to pay the, what's the name of the company?
Comcast. Everybody but us.
Those 10 guys do.
Yeah, so that's not how it's going to work.
I'm just glad it's at least for now. It'll go to another level of court, and it'll be a different, maybe the same judgment or something different.
And part of the reason he had to say that is because if he didn't, there's more than a reasonable chance that they could have tried to do that.
Yep.
And then they're back in court again because then the other 10 are like, look, we understand that we might have given up our voting membership on this, but that doesn't mean you get to steal things from us that we've earned because we're getting these money for our games, and all of these things that were agreed upon when we were all together. So, yeah, Oregon State and Washington State are going to control assets, but that doesn't mean that they get all the money.
Yeah, that's still the part that's very confusing to me is I've seen the arguments back and forth of like, well, if you're leaving a job, you don't get to take everything with you. It's like, yeah, but if you worked for like the full year, you still get your paychecks for that year.
Yeah.
And so I just need some clarity on like kind of how all that's going to work. And obviously all of the people involved need clarity further on how all of this is going to work, which is why you could still very well see them come to some sort of a settlement now that this is ruled in the favor of Oregon State and Washington State for the meantime. But, yeah, I mean, there's some legal battles still to wage here. There's obviously the opportunity to appeal, which it gets into terms, and I'll be honest with you, I'm not a legalese, so like when they start talking about staying the order and things like that, like Paul, I'll defer to you to be able to help explain that a little bit more. Right. But I do know that now it's basically they asked to stay the order, and then I guess by the end of the week we'll have some more clarity. Yeah. And then if it doesn't go the way of the 10, then you'll get the appeal, right, from Washington or whatever that would look like. They would appeal that ruling, and then you'll get into more of a prolonged battle over, the assets and the judgment, and then however long that takes, who knows? And so there is a little bit of a time crunch here, you would think, for everybody involved to want to be able to go ahead and sort this out and move along with their business. But yeah, the idea of just those 10 not walking away with anything seems a little silly to me. But I do think that Washington State and Oregon State, based on the way that the bylaws were phrased and the way that the Pac-12 itself had set precedent with USC and UCLA, that the argument was pretty clear and simple in favor of the Beavers and the Cougars. And so I think that's what you saw yesterday. It was definitely home field advantage. They had a friendly judge presiding over the case, and it was just down the road. Will that be, the case at this next step? I don't know, but it was a good day for Oregon State and Washington State. Keeps things alive as far as rebuilding the Pac-12 potentially, or at least gives them a significant amount of money to either rebuild the Pac-12 or who knows what else opportunity is maybe out there for them. But obviously you got to clear up the rest of this before you can start acting with that money. And there you go with him saying, I believe it was a male that said that you can't, no funny business from either side. Yeah. Like, you won today, but you can't go and spend all this money and all that. So there's a long way to go here.
Because Oregon State and Washington State literally could have walked out and said, okay, we got a meeting right now. And then
what do you all think?
check.
Well, check. 200 here, 200 here.
Well, that is the thing is, he did order to where the 10 can be a part of the meetings involving the Pac-12, but they don't have any say whatsoever in the actual decisions that are made. They can provide advice. They can recommend or give their 2 cents. But for the most part, Washington State and Oregon State could be like, oh, really, USC? That's great. Screw you. And then we're going to do this anyways. I mean, they can do that based on what was ruled yesterday. But the money part of it, that's still tangled up because, like I said, there's likely to be an appeal depending on that stay by the end of the week. And so we'll see where this takes us. But that was a good first step, but it's not the only step. Still a lot to figure out here.
Quick answers from both of you so we can get on to some other news. If, in fact, Washington State and Oregon State took the $400 million and they got a larger piece of it and then spread it out others, let's say 10% less or whatever, is that going to fly?
Well, I mean, it all depends on what the courts say, I guess. I mean, right now it's their money, but they can't really touch it.
Well, as the judge said, this is not a shutout. You can't just go do whatever you want.
So, I mean, I don't know. I don't really understand, I guess.
I think they have to
What I'm saying is we know that it's going to be a court issue. Eventually, it's going to – they'll finally up the flagpole where there's nowhere else to go. But if Oregon State and Washington State met with the others and said, listen, we don't want this thing to get sloppy. We're pissed at you still, but we get it. We would have done the same thing. They don't need to admit that. But
they would have, though.
We're going to take – I don't know what the number was, 412, but let's say we're going to take $50 million each. Or whatever the number would be, and you guys get $30 million each. Do you think they would say, "Hey, shake"?
No.
Okay.
No.
I think that that kind of figures that maybe the 10 would say, and $30 million each. I mean, that's not what it's going to work out to, though, and that would not be enough, I think, for Oregon State and Washington State to feel good about it. I think they'd want way more chunk of the pie than
they need protection
50
for the next year or two.
They want more like 75 apiece, and then everybody else can get the remaining. But no, I do think that. Yeah, you look for a settlement here more so than dragging it out. So if there is a way to accommodate everybody, and that's probably what you have been working on, or you start to work on now. Hey, what about y'all split $100 million, we get the rest of it, we get the network, we get the this, and we get the that, we get the name, and y'all get y'all's money, and we all just go away. Then I think that there's probably somebody or all of those schools that would be tempted to say, okay, we got some money. All right, let's go.
Because they're about to get more.
They're about to recoup it in a major way here in a couple of years. So, I think that a settlement's definitely possible, but what that looks like, that's what obviously would need to be figured out.
College football rankings came out last night.